Welcome, everyone. Today we're joined by James Martinez. How are you, James?
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
James is an incredible researcher, and I would look at him as one of the original whistleblowers on MK Ultra. He worked with Walter Bowart, putting together the incredible book Operation Mind Control, and it's incredible thinking that was released in 1978, so decades and decades ago, and we're still really dealing with this problem. Nothing's happened. All of these facts and survivor stories have been presented to so many areas of our governments, our police forces, our military, and yet these operations are still completely happening in our communities. And I've been so looking forward to having James on today because, number one, we have so many survivors remembering and waking up to the fact that they have been part of these programs and going through the whole process of, uncovering their true history and deprogramming, and also looking out, in the community at large. We can just see mind control taking place, to the masses in a way that has never before happened in history. So I would love for you to give our viewers that haven't come across your work before, James, a bit of an intro, and just to begin with how trauma is used to mind control, because it's such an important thing that we're seeing play out at this time.
Okay, I'd be happy to. The last time I spoke about this, and I hadn't done hardly any public speaking, was about 3 or 4 months ago. I was asked to speak about this because when we did this, we were the original people that proved that behavioral modification through child abuse wasn't just some random experiment they were doing. They were actually using it. It was operational. Hence the titles of the book were Operation Mind Control Volume 1, which came out in 1978, way before anybody even brought up any of the subject or knew anything. People had, that was pure science fiction to people. Nobody could believe, all the original books, a lot of them were taken off the shelves immediately.
Wow.
Not to mention death threats and so forth, because it disappeared from the shelves. And I was involved with the follow-up of that, of the original, which was the Operation Mind Control, the Special Research Edition. So this is all the current information that we had from 1978 up to what would be 1990. Which for the general public listening, that's like, at this rate, 50, 100 years ahead of people in terms of what we knew was going on, and that was just, I could say that based upon the people I was interfacing with at that point. Colonel Fletcher Prouty, who ran all the special operations, black operations for John F. Kennedy, was on our board. He knew. Colonel Tom Bearden, we had these were major people concerned with freedom of not just physical autonomy freedom, but cognitive freedom. We were very, very concerned about that. And the research that we had was way ahead of anybody else. And there was a very small amount of people that even had the courage to even discuss any of that stuff at all. This was pre-David Icke, pre-Alex Jones, pre any of the stuff that was going on. I showed up from England, actually. This is where I grew up. And when I arrived in the US, certain actions led me to walking to what was going on at that time as the whole abduction phenomenon was underway. And this was in their, I believe, the 90s, because the people like Bud Hopkins, Virgil Armstrong, Wendell Stevens, Robert Dean, all these people I'd either met or was dealing with, including I was getting ready to put out the first photographs of alien bodies. But under the pretense, the story was, and that came out it was put out for Penthouse magazine, because Bob Guccione, the pornographer, so-called, as like his last interest. He was interested in, people don't even understand that guy, but it was at that time I was aware that a lot of the abduction phenomena that was taking place was masked as ritual abuse to work as a counterintelligence operation to cover up what was really going on, which is, some of which is coming out. So this was of great interest to Walter Bowart and current people that he was dealing with at that time that knew the plan for the world and the United States. And I came in and entered his camp at that point because I was like the protege of a woman by the name of Marianne Shenefield, who was one of the more lesser known abduction cases, because we were finding out, and I was dealing with Bud Hopkins when he first began collecting all his data having to do with this interface of advanced intelligence, because we were all like fascinated that it was all sexualized. And I knew why it was being sexualized and how they were doing it. And this is of interest to Walter Bowart. So then the second book came out, which we basically went through all our case files to see what the mechanics of the abuse was doing. It wasn't like who and what. We knew who and what. That was easy to find, but getting anybody to do anything about it was a separate matter. We were interested in the actual behavioral software that they had and were utilizing to create certain types of characteristics to work inside culture, not necessarily for governments. They put them into the music industry, they put them into Wall Street, they put them into the banking industry, and these people, you could watch them on TV or have them sit down at dinner and you wouldn't even know what's going on at all. And that's how good it is. You have to really be able to notice somebody and their behavior by like a lot of study and long form communication with people, because now we've normalized child abuse now in the streets, and this has been done by engineering a bioweapon into the information environment as well as the physical environment, because this was a mind control operation. It was a thought virus before it was actual physical virus. They needed to run the mechanics of all of that stuff with inside. So when when I was first given the whole information, my specific part was the UFO alien part, and how that was being done. Because they were real people having experiences that had physical altercations, and then they sidelined and run parallel, faking it, so they could continue hiding under the guise of child abuse to run these things, which are way more important because they don't give a damn about the public at all. I never did, and they're just pretending most of the time. So, and people have to, like, when they deal with the subject, they really have to suspend all their judgment, step back, and just do a transderivational search. Allow yourself to imagine, because we knew that ultimately towards the end, which is we're in now, that imagination, there's a quote that we put in the book, the second book, about the only war is a war against the imagination. All others are subsumed by it, which is the end game, because the end game is your central nervous system and your the flashpoint, which is going to occur between what they're referring to as the singularity and then your body connected to the internet. And that at that flashpoint, that's the end of humanity. And there's a new torque that happens and brings in a new type of awareness. It's like the brain is going to go through a major upgrade. It's happening right now. Hence, we knew how they were going to begin all the cybernetic training within culture by the insertion of the central nervous system, or the effects of the central nervous system through the media extension, as referred to today as the phone. And when I first started off in any public format talking about this stuff, I was trying to get people to pay attention to the phenomena associated with post-anxiety from trauma child abuse or something of that nature, and its relationship to technology. Meaning, when in America, when the pagers first came out before the cell phone, so it's like I would call you to call me, and a signal would go into you. You'd be wearing it, and then it would go off. So we're being trained like dogs, basically, but covertly. And pagers became part of the business model, and people had to wear a pager. This is the first training module to alter prepare us for the effects of instantaneousness that was going to happen when the computer got outside of the house and it was attached to our body. This has all been planned out, and there's nobody I'm aware of out in alternative media or any media for that matter going into all the mechanics of how to do that and who's doing it and what. None of it. So when the decision was made that I would take this knowledge and then I would put it out there, and if asked, I would speak about it. But then I was going to assert my efforts and energies into something completely, totally different, because I knew at the end game was the end of cognitive liberty and the end of freedom. They're doing the whole entire end of free speech and all these issues having to do with communications is because they're creating a completely different language and landscape, as well as destroying sexuality and then fusing this together. This is like we're going to use pronouns and me and mine, moo and who and all this other stuff to confuse and distort and begin the changing process. It's the same thing that happens when people go to enlist in the military. Their whole physical self goes through boot camp. It's not just physical, it's psychological. And it's for a reason. And this is what's happening to us right now. And in a very super, super, super advanced tech way by a lot of brilliant people with unlimited funding and have had access to technology and so forth. They're, I would say, from my understanding currently what's going on, they're at least 200, 300 years ahead technologically. So this gigantic abuse of everybody and their ongoing attempts at normalization, self-destructive behaviors it's all being done in conjunction with the fusion of your central nervous system into essentially the matrix. I guess people understand that these days, and to prepare for the aha God moment, which is happening right now. The effects of this have already started before that flashpoint. So people are going to have to determine the difference between knowing God and actually being God, which are two separate things. And this flashpoint's occurring right now. So all the child abuse and all those things for many, many years of time, they terraformed us. They terraformed our behavior. They terraformed our belief systems. They lying the entire time, of course. And we're all figuring that out really late now. It was our goals and intention is to protect the concept of cognitive liberty, free thought, free thinking, all of those things, and have legislation and national discussion about this self-destructive time in history that we're in. But a lot of people said that this is not only what we deserve, this is what we need in order to upgrade ourselves into something higher than that they have planned, better than what they have planned, because everybody knows that they've already suicided out by the course that they've taken themselves. So it's the abusers abuse. This is one thing that took me a while to figure out, and I'm sure your listeners and your audience, they're aware that if you screw around with a child sexually or do anything that's puts them into a state of terror, whereby the brain reacts to the terror and sets itself up and also jumpstarts itself, and that's how PTSD is created. It's through the body panic and your body in your brain protecting itself in something cannot process at that time. Now, you don't hear anybody saying shit about any of that stuff in courts, city hall, nothing. They just glaze over everything. So, okay, child abuse and everything's bad, but they don't get into the mechanics of why it's bad. They don't go into the millions of files. It's got to be millions by now of it's just a horrific, just splattering of the worst of humanity. It's all in secret confidential files because it's a doctor-patient thing. And, I met with some of these people, and most of them were so traumatized by even treating these patients, let alone dealing with it. So this is you're one of, and I forgot who referred me to you, but I think it was a British lady, and she said you need to talk to Gabbi because she's heavily focused on that particular aspect. So I commend that, and when I'm asked to speak about it and go into the mechanics of it a little from a different perspective that people have never heard from ever, I do it. The last time I did it was in the US because I was asked to, and when I showed up before a live audience, I went into some of the stuff they had never known that's been going on, that is related to how we feel, ultimately how we feel about the child in us. Yeah. That's what it's about. Because I'm not a parent, but from observing parents objectively, when we extend our biological genetic information forward, we have offspring. When there's a severed connection between those two energy units that rupture culture. I mean, and we know this, and all the top people in behavioral science, they all know that. It's like old. It's like, to me, it's like, we know what's going on, but it never makes it this subject that we're talking about now. This would never make it as producers ever in corporate Zionist owned media. Sorry, because they're in on it. Absolutely. And people they have to understand these very, very ugly truths, despite what their friends and family are seeing, because this is it's a very dark area to be involved in, but it's the truth. Most people don't even have the guts to get there, and they don't know what to do when they get there, and they find out whether it's recovering memory or emotion that's been blocked through post-hypnotic blocks or things of that nature, to put people into extremely difficult survival tools for somebody to go out and work in this world, and then having to deal with all the problems that they have with everything from sleep, every kind of drug addiction, cutters, self-mutilators, serial killers. I mean, these are all our prison population. Most of them, it's our fault. We put them there because of what we've done and what we've allowed.
Yeah.
This is what's happened because we don't give a shit enough to modify ourselves correctly. So it's part of our evolution. So this is our aim was to prepare everybody to salvage their cognitive liberty and their right to free thought and their right to regulate their free thought. And what I mean by that is, if you want to alter your consciousness, you should have the right to do so. Meaning, most people, the simplest way is when you drink a couple bottles of wine, you alter your consciousness because you biochemically have changed. But people should have a right to do that under a religious or whatever, because you have to ultimately govern your own consciousness. And people right now, most of the alternative media is completely, totally violated, and they're already co-opted by very, very brilliant people that know how to do that type of stuff and discredit everybody and so forth. So I made a decision that I would focus my efforts primarily on the deployment of advanced technology in the form of energy, which is, just so everybody knows, no surprise, if they wanted to clean up planet Earth and get out all the real tech that they really have to fix everything, they could have done it 80 years ago. Easy. So this whole sulker jerk bullshit that you hear every single day about, oh, we got to save the planet, blah, 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 blah. That's not even true. But nobody talks about the tech though. But something did just happen. It was very, very important. It's sort of related, and I think your audience should appreciate this, is an announcement that was made of the nuclear world, saying that they have advanced over unity devices to create abundant clean energy. That was a very gigantic, huge announcement, because it's partially true, but it's not in the form that they're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's where I spend most of my time, is in the energy sector. But it was a leapfrog into that section, because my colleagues and myself were concerned about our free will and everything. So I took a jump ahead and got into the energy sector, because I know that's what the end game is. Because none of the stuff that they're talking about that they want to do, they can't pull off any of it. Okay. They can't pull off electric cars. They can't, the infrastructure is not there. The energy is not in place, nothing. So it's just one big, huge, like arrogant lie that they're doing, while they're trafficking our children, destroying sexuality, destroying everything at the same time. So it's coming at us from multiple angles. Mm-hmm. And it's not an easy thing to swallow. I mean, I don't expect people to believe me right away. I don't want them to. I want them to spend the time, like real researchers have done, and really dig in and get there, which is what I had to do, because I was given new information initially when I was working with Walter Bowart. I worked with him right up to his death, and we knew. He was very much, this is going to happen. It's already happening. It's done. And I was in the 90s. I'm like, I don't see anything going on.
How incredible!
I don't see anything going on. Yeah, nothing apparent to me in culture at that time was showing any decay at all. People were just going nuts, spending money and making money and all that stuff, and sports and this and that, and there's not a care in the world. So I was sort of optimistic for a while, and then slowly but surely I went through other evidence that we interfaced with. This was going on. And they had a plan to alter consciousness and train consciousness to be in a certain parameter, and then use it against us. And we would participate in all that. So the abuse of children, all of that, whilst it's tragic, it's not about them. It's about the science behind what makes them them. That's what it's about. We should be doing what Brazil is doing. There should be, now I'm talking about the United States
everywhere.
Because
Australia,
our problem.
James.
Yeah. I'm don't criticize any other country or anything, because we should be fixing this in our own yard, because America is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave. And I can tell you right now that not all that's a total lie as well. It's not free, it's not brave, it's not nothing. They're mostly they've done such a job on engineering consciousness that and shaping culture, that it's more important to have a huge house and a perfect running car and a trophy wife than it is to have a higher state of consciousness discussed in local and city government. Because the people that I see, they're mayors, whatever, I wouldn't piss on them if they're on fire. They're like losers, because they don't have the guts to talk about what's really going on. They don't have the guts to even address it at all. So if you're an elected employee and you're in a position like that, and I don't hear you covering that, you're an idiot. And you should just get out and resign right now. And I can speak for America specifically. That I do know for sure. But I know there's other pockets of more rebellious people with some fortitude and guts in them to get up and make a stand. But We're part of the problem. We are part of the problem because we don't have the courage to protect our own children. I mean, I've seen some horrible crap in files and just stuff that makes me wonder that the family itself as a cohesive unit that builds culture, they don't like that.
Yeah.
They don't like families. They
There's
don't
been
like anything
such an
like that.
attack on family, hasn't there? It's been such an easy way for them to weaken our culture through
Yeah.
breaking down the family.
Yeah, I hear what's the damage to just talking to somebody today about the damage that's been done to women. Your reproductive systems, your belief systems and values, what it is to be a woman related to a man. You can do the feminism thing, which was all weaponized by CIA in the United States. That all that lot mixed with the chemical neutering of the American male and everybody, the complete attack on the whole thing. The mating game has been totally disastrously destroyed. The remnants are still there of components of the creating families, pair bonding with another sex, all that stuff. They've interfered with the whole thing. Nature, our primal nature to reproduce. They've gotten rid of a lot of it, and now they're inserting and distorting the language patterns associated with male and female and sexuality itself by relabeling everything. And when the trauma is already in there, you got to put a new language layer in there, anchor the language into the behavior, the stimulus response behavior, and put it into the schools and start nail it in. That's what they're doing, is they're creating this whole new civilization of just malfunctioning. Those people are all going to die off or self-execute themselves anyway, but they're using that tool as the excuse for depopulation that they're doing. But I've learned the hard way after watching the behavioral software technology be used in the self-help industry in the United States, which is where it started.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins is he's a graduate of CIA technology. He was the first guy, and he's very good at what he does.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an effect of the U.S. have the largest prison population in the world. Wow. Why? There's a reason. And most of those people that are in there were beaten up to a pulp. They're abused. And this is what happens. And people don't have the courage in America that I've seen yet to prioritize children, prioritize them. They should be taken care of. They should be put in the best schools. We should have a completely rebirth of our relationship to children as a man and as a woman. And it should be in the national discussion points, not just the religious body saying, no, hands-on within the culture itself, because this is where the damage has been done. Because and they've divided everybody. It's so bad now, I can't even believe it. But I get contacted by certain people in certain groups that are telling me, there's a bust over here and there's a bust over here and but I see very little questions. Nobody asks the right questions about child trafficking. They talk about it as a subject matter and as a business, but what they never talk about is the survivors of it, because and what happens and what that does to culture, the decay that's in there, because it breeds drug addiction, alcoholism, self-abuse, prostitution. I mean, every worst self-destructive pattern. Yeah. But you never hear anything about that. They don't say anything. Nothing. I'm waiting. I'm going to tell people when you see something out there that's worth a damn, that they're actually saying something, send it to me, because they're not doing anything. Like so people need to understand, having worked in media, producers, by the time a story and a cut is going to come about in some of news fashion in the US, it's already been stripped, cut, passed down. So by the time that the story does come out, the meat of it's already been taken away because producers won't allow it. So this type of stuff is the best that people are going to get. And unfortunately,
Real
we've
conversations.
been conditioned to think that the way communication has any authority if it's in high gloss, high definition delivery systems with nice suits and good looking women standing there reading a teleprompter. That's how we want it fed to us. And that's our fault. Yeah. So this type of stuff, we had to resort to this, and this is not the best delivery system to do this, but it's the one people are having to do to adapt to whether they've been personally involved or know somebody that was trafficked or abused or whatever. And then none of that comes to the surface, because I get asked, people always say, do you know this person? Do you know this person? And without mentioning any names, yes, I know the famous people that are whistleblowers in that field that were victims of it. However, the people that were victims of it, when I talk with them privately, I tell them, I think the best thing that you should do is work on yourself. Don't become a publicity machine and reinforce the behavior that's already layered in there while you're trying to do therapy, while you're trying to do this. You need to back down entirely and live a more inflective, inverted world, and manage yourself and heal yourself. And don't commercialize yourself out there and sell books and run around saying how screwed up I am. Because one thing that people know me is I don't like coming out and talking about all the problems without giving solutions or encouraging people to find their own solutions. That's really what it comes down to. You're going to have to heal yourself. You can't rely on anybody at this age. And now all education now will be centralized. The entire structure of society is collapsing from medical to news to everything. And people eventually are going to be, they won't know the difference between their imagination and what they see. And this is already happening now. So this will further, it's going to be distorted. They've given a sliver to the public. You remember last week when they said, oh, AI has now figured out how to do a caricature of the way you look, right?
Oh, that
was the biggest trap I've ever seen, and everybody went for it.
I can't believe everyone's using that.
They don't even know what they signed
to
up for.
Make a picture of you. I'm like, don't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wake up, guys.
Exactly. No, they did, and I was like, wow, this is a real Trojan horse. They put it right out there, and they don't even know what that software was designed to do. And so you've got the encouragement of self-suicide now. Yeah. And they're advertising it.
Yeah. When mental health is at its absolute lowest, like there's more people suffering from mental conditions and on medication because of what they're doing, all of the social engineering and the fear and shock that's going constantly. Yeah.
That's exactly. They're doing it all at the same time at every angle. They've attacked it, got us at the consumption point, and they've got us biologically, and they've already been doing the abuse over long periods of time. I mean, I've dealt with the people from American Indians having their children taken away, which is a more overt in your face act. It's like beyond humiliating.
We still have stories I've heard in Australia as well. Yeah. Our Aboriginal people's children are being taken away still today.
So heartbreaking.
It really is.
I'm not even a parent, and when I hear it or see it, I can't deal with that.
Yeah.
It's not even my child, because I have empathy for families, and because there are a lot of good people out there that will go above and beyond for their family and provide, and that still exists, but we're being encouraged on every level to self-destruct instead.
Yeah.
So Operation Mind Control and MK Ultra was the launch the program to end the species and end our current model of thinking. because we knew the flashpoint would be when the singularity moment happened, because we're practically cybernetic now. They just have one or two steps left, and that'll be the flashpoint. And then we'll have to decide whether we're going to go on that road or not.
Yeah.
Because they're already going to, most young people are going to just suicide out when they tie in their nervous system to the internet. That'll be it. You won't have any connection to them. A parent would not have a connection with that child any further, because they would enter in a level of knowledge that would, the contrast would be so intense that by the time they interface with their parents, they won't have the same rapport. It'll be cut off.
Wow.
So yeah, these are the things that are unfolding right now.
Really?
So I'm glad you cover a subject like this, because
thank you.
When I see families and people still having children, I do see that. I'm very happy to see that now. I wasn't as much before. I would say, okay, there it is. But now I look at it and watch it, and I'm like, that's what we should be doing. We should be building families, building communities, talking to each other way more. We need to cut out all the divisionary bullshit that's going on. That should be all over. I deal with a lot of political dignitaries in the American Indian and Black community and so forth. And the people that are aware of what's going on, saying that there needs to be a major unification now. At a bare minimum, if people that are watching this have never done so, you should go out and meet your neighbor.
Yeah.
Say hello to them, get to know them, find out what they know and don't know, and start talking to people without the electric wall. Don't email them. Have a conversation with them face to face.
Organic conversation.
Make that your primary. If you can do a bare minimum, that counters everything, because the thing that people want the most is connection.
Human connection.
We're dying for it. We're dying for it. All the problems of what they've done. No matter how I may like my girlfriend or not, I have to go through the computer first to get to it, or otherwise she won't respond. So they put a wall, electric wall, which they designed to do as well, because it altered communications and the relationships we have in pair bonding and the whole dynamics. People have seen the effects of this. Like, so well, she texted me this. Well, she didn't say this. She texted you this. Those are two separate communications. She texted you this. Why won't she say this? And you get into these whole things. I've had all these conversations. And the reason why I bring that up is to circle back around to see what they've done to human relations, starting with the children, to cut them out.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're facing, because you can go and listen to blah, 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 and all the radio stations and all the people saying this stuff now, but it really doesn't mean anything if you don't individually get involved on some level. Yeah. If you at bare minimum tell your neighbor or friend.
Yeah, it's time to get our hands dirty, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Way past that time, because they're going to get dirty whether you like it or not. No.
Yeah. The fight's coming to wherever you are, so you might as well stand up now. Exactly.
This is exactly right. So that's the best thing I could offer people. And then unite. There's the best line in Braveheart that Mel Gibson directed is when the guy put his hand and said, "Let us unite the clans." We had victory against the people who were dominating us. We really need to unite as a people. Black, red, yellow, brown, whatever. I've been lucky enough to travel a lot of the world and have Asian friends, I have American Indian friends, I have Black friends, I have all those people. And we need to address our faults that we've done, each of us, to our cultures against each other, because this is one thing that everybody can get behind as humanity.
Yeah, and our children. If as a society, if we're not,
that's part of it.
Children, we're just degenerating.
That's the top of the pyramid, is the child. That's the real top of the pyramid, is what it should be. And so I always commend people for even bringing this stuff up, because it's not easy listening.
Yeah, no,
You know,
not the most popular conversation, but it needs,
no,
to
not
happen,
at all.
doesn't it?
No,
It needs to happen.
yeah,
I was going to ask you, James, you brought up briefly Tony Robbins, and obviously he's associated with NLP, so neuro-linguistic programming. And I see so much of that being used, both in the mainstream media and alternative media, with trigger words being loaded into us. And, this starts going into what you're talking about with the behavioral adaptation, which is leading us into, technology and linking with AI. So some of the ones that I've seen used a lot are the whole white rabbit trigger, which, for people that have mind control programming, that's a very, very common program. I haven't met a survivor that hasn't had that kind of programming in them, because it's, your Alice in Wonderland, which is a pretty much standard programming all over the world. So I'd be interested to hear, because I know you've just talked about how the different strains of COVID, the scamdemic, are even being used, like Omicron and Delta, as trigger words to, activate.
Yeah, this is okay. This is an important thing I need to tell everybody here. I've told people privately, and then I said, well, maybe we shouldn't tell anybody, but then it doesn't matter, because my feelings is that
Yeah.
you should know this. So I was interviewed by Robert Kennedy because of my whole involvement with the whole thing, and I didn't have much advance notice to do so. So it was very quick. I was in my car, did it from my phone, and he started asking me, I know he knew who my business partner was, and he knew the whole thing that happened with LSD in the United States, as well as the whole MK Ultra thing. And it was refreshing me to talk to somebody that's lived it, so to speak. So when we came into discussing the COVID thing, I told him just real direct. I said, Omicron, that word was it was hypnotically placed and embedded into sleepers to be used as a way to alter human behavior. It's like a post-hypnotic suggestion where they would imprint the word in the physical body the same way. When a doctor comes in and hits your knee flips out. So I read the piece to him. I said Omicron, because that was like suddenly just came out all over the press. And I was doing the audiobook of the researchers edition, which people can listen to. This James Martinez Media on Anchor, Operation Mind Control, the whole thing is there. But in those chapters that we wrote in the 90s, one of the things that freaked out all the psychiatrists and psychologists that we're dealing with was people in Florida and their clients would all report of this word Omicron when they were all this gibberish was coming out of their mouth, and they were trying to find out what that is related to, on what body part, and when were you told, and under what conditions, and because they didn't even understand the mechanics of how all that was working in a lot of the psychiatric the public sector, not the private sector, of psychiatry and psychology. They didn't know how to deal with dissociative identity disorder at all, because there's booby traps in it and all sorts of stuff that they set up when they started doing this type of stuff to people. So when I figured out through the files that we had that word had been placed in people in California, Florida, the Midwest, and when the psychiatrists and everybody were exchanging information, they were saying, wait a minute, this person doesn't even know this person over here, and this person doesn't know this person over here. And that word was embedded into cults, sleepers, sex abuse cases, and then generationally moved through people that they interfaced with, whether they were sexually or whether it was through drugs or something. That word was placed in there. So, and then I sent him article from the book where we go over that.
Mm.
This is in 1990.
Yeah,
1990.
decades ago.
Yes. So when I heard the name and they started announcing all that, I'm like, they could have named it anything, anything in the whole wide world, but they named it that. Yeah. And then I went back into my paperwork and I looked and went, there it is. Yeah, that's what because back in 1990, that was just a word. It didn't have any
meaning associated.
All this stuff we had was so far ahead of everybody. It was difficult to see it come to fruition, because I thought that's never going to work. That was my attitude back then. That's never going to work.
No,
they're going to forget about all that Omicron word, and they won't care about that. Their whole bodies will be different. It won't make any difference, this Omicron word, this trigger word they put in. And of course, they come out with it and go nuts for a whole week, traumatizing everybody all across the country, even if they didn't have the kill shot or not. What they were doing is that changed the behavior. And yeah, it could have, I don't know who was anchored to or for what, but some of the shootings that occurred.
Absolutely.
That could have been for that. Because if you can, if you say a word and repeat that word over a week's newscast, and enough people hear it, somebody in some state way over there will suddenly feel the impulse and need to go do something, and then eventually it follows through like an itch. There's a compulsive behavior to drive it, and that is what they did. And I met him, and he never aired that piece. He never aired that because that was taken down. I was expecting that interview to be posted, and they took it down. And then I was exchanging information with them. I have all the emails and everything, and just because I was supposed to go meet with him privately to get into the real meat of the situation, because he was interested in the murder of his father, not his uncle. And he just went public 48 hours ago when they declassified all the JFK stuff. And it says where the CIA was involved. He has a much, much better understanding than most of the public. In fact, his perspective is completely unique. And he was interested in post-hypnotic amnesia as related to creating false memory, total amnesia to events, because the psychiatrists and people that were looking at Sirhan even today, as he shot Robert's father, they still couldn't figure out why he couldn't remember it, what he did. And he's in prison for life. And he sits there. He's not a confrontational guy at all. And he sits there and he willingly talks about it anytime, but he'll always say he doesn't remember anything. And that's MK Ultra. That's the type of thing that you can do to either distort the memories or put in false memories or just completely take it out entirely, so that it never works in sequence in a court, because your timelines will change. You're not sure when the event happened. Was it a week ago? Was it 5 minutes ago? So that type of testimony can't work in a court of law. So it hides everything in the mess of it. So yeah, that was I had told Mike Adams about it. I told Robert Kennedy Jr. and I did some publicity on it, because it was a thing that I found that here it is. It's in the book, 1990, and there they came out and used it.
It just shows.
Anytime they're using language, all the language is weaponized. Just people need to understand that language is weaponized against you. So people say, well, what do I do?
Repetitive words, when we see repetitive words and phrases being used, even in the alternative media, people have to really be careful and unpack why that's being done.
Yeah, the problem is now is their nervous system has been so inverted, it's created an attention economy. And now people feel the compulsive need to have media validation now, and likes, and at whatever cost. And the amount of people that's seeing them in their little group is like their entire value system. Oh my God, yeah. It's such work, and so it's so obviously just a crock. And people are all tied up into it, though. They got everybody controlled that way with their own vanity, and
they really do.
It's so crazy.
They're just stroking the ego.
Yeah, while they change the algorithm behind the scenes, and they jump around and then follow the new algorithm like rabbits. It's they don't even know they're getting played. It's like embarrassing.
And that's mind control, isn't it? That's the programming that we're living through.
Yep, right.
Yeah. So to finish up, James, like I would love to hear, you went through some solutions there, but for people that are either remembering, that they have had an experience of mind control or ritual abuse in their past, or just the general public, because we've all been inundated with mind control and NLP and the propaganda of the media through our lives. What would you suggest? I know you've talked a bit about healing.
Well, the easiest thing to do is remind yourself, whether you put stickers on, whether you remember it or loop it around or you say it, is you need to be aware of your awareness.
Yeah.
People are not. They're on autopilot most of the time.
And that's dissociation, really, in a nutshell, isn't it? Is dissociation.
Correct. There needs to be more time inverted.
Yeah.
Not going out, going inward.
Being.
Anything that you're doing in broadcasting, if it's not forcing people inward, you're wasting your time, because they don't even hear it anyway. There's just the information overload is way too much, and the attention span now, people don't have one. So that means nothing's getting in there. So they're just going through the motion. So if you can get them into an inverted state, you'll have a shot of making through with them. That's the first thing I say. The other thing I say is the basis of all therapy, the good stuff out there. It's based on the presumption that the map is not the territory. And I would suggest that people who are seeing this, people throw around that term, but they don't know where it came from. And it's the basis of all therapy in the world, as we have been told to understand what being a psychologist or psychiatrist is. It's basically, that was the building block of neurolinguistic programming, was the concept that we build our own maps by our perceptions, and that all perception is gamble. It's always gamble, and that perception should not be fixed. Yeah. Some people, general semantics is the field of study related to this, and it's instant relief when you start studying that and you realize that perception itself is all gamble, meaning that you have a choice looking left or right, good or bad into a situation. And that premise is the basis of general semantics, which was, it was a German engineer that began that whole concept, but it also turned into what is therapy today. Because anytime you go into a therapeutic situation where you've asked for assistance and you go in and meet a professional, what their job is to get you to reframe you. You have got to reframe your idea of self in a way that everybody's in agreement with. So you're interfacing with somebody that forces you inward. So if people study general semantics and they're dealing with looking at the news and everything, they've got to deal with their own perceptions first. Marshall McLuhan said this, and this is another tool people have: percept first, concept second. Anybody that I talk to in media ecology environments, it's always percept first, concept second.
Yeah.
How are you perceiving news? Through what medium are you perceiving the news? What is the delay in the medium? And then what is the chosen point of perception or a point of view? Because one of the smartest things the networks did was create a show called The View. The View is one of the most popular shows in America because they use emotion to substantiate a view of 5 women on a stage, and for whatever political parameters. But again, all perception is gamble. The reason I say this is for people that are suffering, that can't afford to go to therapy, or whatever suffering there is, they understand fundamentally that they have to be aware of their own awareness, and they have to understand that the map is not the territory at all. In fact, it's not even close. And that your map of the world isn't the world. It's your map of the world. And so it puts you in the position of power.
Yeah.
That's free, it's cheap, it's all true. People can do all their homework on it. And if you start there, you can control and manage your emotions and your perceptions in a much, much better way. Much, much better way. And that's really the basis of all therapy that's ever existed. Is you go in there and you're trying to modify your behavior by re-engineering the way you view yourself or what yourself is to get you into a better position. And the Tony Robbins and the self-help industry, that's an offshoot of all the damage that's been done to the culture, because they filled a need. You know, you go into an American bookstore and you go in the self-help section, it's like this big, like Eckhart Tolle and all that. So it's all reframing. It's all reframing all that era of books and whatnot, or it's all engineered in there by design. But ultimately, if you're the perceiver, you're deciding by what you're doing. So like food, you regulate your food intake, you should regulate your mental intake. So put yourself around positive people, shut off don't read newspapers, regulate it and put it at a certain time. Don't bathe in media. Regulate your intake of media, and it will slow everything down, and you'll have much more fulfilling life. All of that I mentioned is like a quick summary of a lot of research and work that's out there, all to help people kind of transition through this whole like self-imposed crisis that we've done to ourselves. The reason why I say self is because we've allowed it.
We sure have. We sure have. Yeah, that's just brilliant, James. And I think, for people to bring back the empowerment and just to, remember that, you're the best expert on yourself, and you can have that honesty with yourself and deprogram, whether it's from the media or from, earlier childhood abuse. It's all within our power. And I think, these conversations like we're having today and normalizing this truth getting out there of, the tools that they're using against us helps disempower the way they're able to control both individuals and our society as well. So thank you so much for all your work, James, and for your time today. Was there anything you'd like
One more thing, if people are trying to reach me, because this kind of has started a lot more, is what I did is I set up a Patreon account for more private stuff that is going on that I'm aware of. I go into it every other day, but there's something that's happened that's highly significant that I'm going to use as to run a parallel narrative to what's going on now, because of the deployment of certain technologies that are happening right now that I'm putting and updating into that Patreon account. And I have personal access to it because I'm about to do a big press conference. I'm in Europe, and I'm getting ready to do some prime time larger stuff now because of what's happened. So if people want to find me there, I'd be happy to communicate with them there, and they feel free to ask anything. It's much better if you come to me with questions. Give me a little time to get to you, because I don't do short answers. I'll give you as much as I know to help you out. So just to let everybody know.
Amazing. And I'll pop the link for that Patreon maybe in the video description so people can reach out to you as well, James.
Certainly. So thank you very much for your time and everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you for all that you're doing and, for being such an incredible whistleblower for all of these decades. It's really lighting the way forward for all of us at this time. So thank you, James.
You got it. Take care and Merry Christmas to you.